Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The conference room fell silent as my wife, Mira Callan Carvin, announced the promotion. 8 weeks. That's how long Jace Arnell had been on our payroll before she handed him the director of operations position I'd been working toward for 3 years. I sat in the back row, watching her deliver the news with that practiced corporate smile. The same smile she'd worn when we signed our prenuptial agreement 5 years ago, back when her startup was just an idea, and my engineering background was helping build the foundation of what would become a $50 million tech company. Jace brings exceptional leadership experience from his previous role at Morrison Industries, Mira continued, her voice carrying that authoritative tone that made board members nod approvingly. His strategic vision aligns perfectly with our expansion goals. Strategic vision. Right. The same strategic vision that had him asking me basic questions about our software architecture just last week. The same vision that required me to explain our client management system 3 separate times because he couldn't grasp the fundamentals I'd spent months developing. Around me, colleagues shifted uncomfortably. Janet from accounting avoided eye contact. Mike from IT stared at his laptop screen. They all knew what I knew, what everyone in this room understood, but nobody would say. Jace Arnell was getting promoted because he used to share a bed with the CEO. The applause started slowly, building as people realized they needed to show enthusiasm. I stood up, my chair scraping against the polished floor. Every head turned toward me. Mira's eyes met mine across the room, and for just a moment, that confident mask slipped. She knew what this looked like. She knew exactly what message this sent to every employee who'd been grinding through late nights and weekend calls. I walked to the front of the room where Jay stood basking in his unearned glory. He was tall, conventionally handsome in that generic executive way, with perfectly styled hair and a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. When he saw me approaching, his smile widened, as if he expected me to congratulate him on outmaneuvering the husband. "Congratulations, Jace," I said, extending my hand. My voice carried clearly through the room. 8 weeks is impressive timing. He shook my hand, his grip firm and confident. "Thanks, Brooks. I'm looking forward to working with the team." Working with the team. As if he hadn't spent the last month having me explain every project, every client relationship, every process that kept this company running. As if he hadn't been taking credit for initiatives I'd started before he even walked through our doors. I turned to address the room, keeping my voice level and professional. "I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to contribute here. It's been an incredible 3 years." I paused, letting that timeline sink in. I've learned so much about leadership, about recognizing talent, about the importance of experience and dedication. The room grew quieter. Mira's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "That's why," I continued, reaching into my jacket pocket, "I'm submitting my resignation, effective immediately." I placed the envelope on the conference table, right next to the promotional materials featuring Jace's headshot. I'm confident that 8 weeks of experience will serve the company well going forward. The silence was absolute. Janet's mouth hung open. Mike had stopped pretending to look at his laptop. Even Jace's confident smile faltered as the implications hit him. He'd just inherited my workload, my client relationships, my projects, with exactly 8 weeks of company knowledge to guide him. Mira found her voice first. "Brooks, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No need," I said, my tone remaining pleasant and professional. "I think everything's been made perfectly clear. The company values are evident in today's decisions. I respect that and I'm acting accordingly." I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Mira? You might want to review the Morrison Industries contract, the one Jace negotiated before he came here. The client called yesterday asking about some discrepancies. I left my notes on your desk." That was a lie, but a useful one. There were no discrepancies, but there would be plenty of questions. Once Jace tried to explain a deal he'd never actually managed. I'd spent enough time cleaning up his mistakes over the past 8 weeks to know his pattern: big promises, sloppy execution, and a talent for disappearing when problems surfaced. The conference room door closed behind me with a soft click. I walked past the reception area, past the motivational posters about teamwork and integrity, past the awards wall where my contributions had helped earn 3 industry recognitions. None of it mattered now. Mira had made her choice, and I was making mine. My office was on the third floor, a modest space with a window view of the parking lot. I'd never cared about the view. I'd cared about the work, about building something meaningful, about proving that merit and dedication meant something in the business world. Apparently, I'd been naive. I packed quickly, efficiently. 3 years of personal items fit into 2 cardboard boxes, a few family photos, some technical books, the coffee mug my sister Lisa had given me when I first got hired. Everything else belonged to the company, including the innovations and improvements I'd developed that were now generating significant revenue. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira. "We need to talk. Don't do anything rash." Rash. As if walking away from a company that had just demonstrated its complete disregard for my contributions was an emotional decision. As if I hadn't spent the last 8 weeks watching my wife promote her ex-boyfriend, while pretending it was about business merit. I deleted the message without responding. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. When the doors opened in the lobby, I found myself face to face with Jace. He'd apparently left the meeting early, probably to catch me before I disappeared entirely. "Brooks, wait up," he said, jogging slightly to match my pace as I headed for the exit. "Look, I know this is awkward, but it doesn't have to change anything between us professionally." I stopped walking and turned to face him. "Professionally? Yeah, I'm hoping you'll reconsider the resignation. The company needs experienced people like you. I could use your expertise as I transition into the role." The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted me to stay and train him, to help him succeed in the position he'd obtained through personal connections rather than professional competence. He wanted me to enable my own humiliation. "Jace," I said, setting down my boxes, "let me ask you something. In your 8 weeks here, how many client calls have you handled independently?" His confident expression flickered. "Well, I've been learning the systems. How many project deliverables have you completed without assistance?" "Brooks, come on. Every new hire needs time to—" "How many of our major clients can you name without looking at a contact list?" The silence stretched between us. Around us, employees were filing out of the building for lunch, some glancing our way with obvious curiosity. Word of my resignation was probably already spreading through the office. "The thing is," I continued, picking up my boxes, "I don't think you need my expertise at all. Mira clearly believes 8 weeks is sufficient preparation for a director-level position. I'm sure you'll figure it out." I walked away, leaving him standing in the lobby with that confused expression I'd grown accustomed to seeing during our project meetings. The same expression he wore whenever I explained something technical, or when clients asked detailed questions about implementation timelines, or when board members requested specific performance metrics. My car was parked in the back lot, a practical sedan that reflected my practical approach to life. No need for status symbols or impressive displays of wealth. I'd always believed that results spoke louder than appearances. Another naive assumption, apparently. As I loaded my boxes into the trunk, I caught sight of Jace's car parked in the visitor section, a bright red sports car with temporary plates. Still driving on dealer tags after 8 weeks. Probably waiting to see if the job worked out before committing to permanent registration. Smart man. He might need to make a quick exit once the board realized what they'd actually hired. My phone rang as I pulled out of the parking lot. Mira's name appeared on the display. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message at the first red light. "Brooks, this is ridiculous. You're throwing away your career over a personnel decision that has nothing to do with you personally. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults." Nothing to do with me personally. Right. Just a coincidence that her ex-boyfriend had landed a senior position after 8 weeks. While her husband remained in a mid-level role after 3 years. Just a business decision based purely on merit and qualifications. I deleted the voicemail and drove home. Our house was in Riverside Estates, a development that had seemed like a symbol of success, when we'd bought it 3 years ago. Now it felt like a stage set, all surface appeal with nothing substantial underneath, like Jace's resume, or Mira's explanation for his promotion, or our marriage itself. The living room was exactly as we'd left it that morning. Pristine, professionally decorated, and completely impersonal. Mira had hired an interior designer who specialized in executive living spaces. Everything coordinated perfectly, from the abstract art on the walls to the carefully arranged books on the coffee table. Books that neither of us had actually read, selected purely for their visual impact. I set my boxes down and walked to the home office we shared. Mira's side was organized with military precision, color-coded files, multiple monitors displaying real-time company metrics, and a collection of business awards arranged for maximum visual impact during video calls. My side was simpler, a basic desk setup, where I'd spent countless evenings working on projects that had helped build her company's success. Our prenuptial agreement was filed in the cabinet behind my desk, in a folder marked Legal Documents. I'd forgotten about it until this morning, when the implications of Mira's decision had crystallized into a clear course of action. The agreement had seemed like a formality when we'd signed it. Mira's lawyer had insisted on protecting her business interests, which made sense given that she was the founder and primary stakeholder. I'd agreed readily, confident that our marriage was built on partnership and mutual respect. The document was just paperwork, a legal requirement that would never become relevant. I'd been wrong about that too. The prenup was comprehensive, covering everything from personal assets to business equity. The key clause was Section 7.3. Any increase in business valuation or equity appreciation occurring during the marriage shall be considered marital property, subject to equitable distribution. When we'd signed it, Mira's company was worth maybe $2 million on paper. Today, after 3 years of growth that I'd helped engineer, it was valued at over $50 million. The difference, $48 million, qualified as marital property under our agreement. I photographed the relevant pages with my phone, then called my sister Lisa. She'd graduated law school 2 years ahead of me, before I'd switched to engineering, and she now ran a family law practice in downtown Chicago. "Brooks," she answered on the second ring. "Shouldn't you be at work?" "I resigned this morning. I need a lawyer." "What happened?" I explained the situation briefly, the promotion, the timeline, the obvious conflict of interest. Lisa listened without interrupting, her silence telling me she was taking notes. "How much is the company worth now?" she asked when I finished. "Latest board valuation was $52 million. That was 6 months ago. It's probably higher now." "And your prenup covers marital appreciation of business assets?" "Section 7.3. I'm looking at it right now." Lisa was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted into professional mode. "Brooks, you need to understand what you're starting here. This isn't just a divorce. This is a corporate restructuring that could impact dozens of employees, board members, investors. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" She promoted her ex-boyfriend to a position he's not qualified for after 8 weeks on the job, while her husband of 5 years, who helped build the company, gets passed over despite 3 years of documented results. If that doesn't justify scrutiny, what does? I'm not arguing the ethics. I'm making sure you understand the scope. This will get ugly. Fast. Mira will fight it with everything she has. Corporate lawyers, private investigators, media management. She'll try to destroy your reputation to protect her business. I looked around the home office at the awards and achievements that represented years of collaborative effort, at the financial statements showing company growth that my innovations had helped drive, at the family photos from better times, when I'd believed that marriage meant partnership and business meant merit. "Lisa, I've spent 3 years building something I believed in, working for someone I trusted, supporting a vision I thought we shared. This morning I discovered that none of it mattered. My contributions, my loyalty, my results, none of it was enough to compete with 8 weeks of personal history. So you want to burn it all down? I want what I'm legally entitled to. Nothing more, nothing less." Another pause. Then Lisa's voice, firm and decisive. Okay, don't talk to Mira. Don't sign anything. Don't make any statements to anyone at the company. Can you be at my office in 2 hours? I'll be there. And Brooks, bring everything. Employment records, performance reviews, project documentation, financial statements, communication logs. Everything that proves your contribution to the company's growth. I spent the next hour gathering documents. 3 years of performance evaluations, all rated exceeds expectations. Project completion reports showing initiatives I'd led that had generated millions in new revenue. Client testimonials praising my technical expertise and problem-solving abilities. Email threads where Mira had praised my contributions and discussed my potential for advancement.
He just gave me a massage. That's it!
Remember, I won't be a cuckold!
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
The irony was overwhelming. I had documentation proving my value to the company, evidence of my role in its success, records of promises and commitments that had been casually discarded the moment a more appealing option appeared. I'd been building my own legal case without realizing it. My phone buzzed with another call from Mira. This time I answered. Brooks, where are you? We need to talk about this situation. I'm at home, gathering some documents. Documents for what? Lisa's handling my legal interests now. All communication should go through her office. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. When Mira spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. You're making a serious mistake. Whatever you think you're accomplishing, this will hurt you more than it hurts me. I built this company. I own this company. Your name isn't on any patents, any trademarks, any incorporation documents. But it is on our marriage certificate and our prenuptial agreement. Another silence, longer this time. Brooks, be reasonable. We can work this out. The promotion doesn't change anything between us personally. Jace is qualified for the position and 8 weeks, Mira. 8 weeks versus 3 years. If you can explain how that represents superior qualifications, I'm listening. Experience isn't just about time served. Jace brings strategic perspective from his previous role. The role he was terminated from? The Morrison Industries position that ended with a client lawsuit over project delays? I heard her sharp intake of breath. She hadn't expected me to know about that. But I'd done my research during Jace's first week, the same due diligence that any responsible company would perform before hiring a senior executive. Apparently, Mira had skipped that step. How did you? I do my homework. Something you might have considered before handing him a director position. Brooks, listen to me carefully. If you pursue this legal action, it won't just impact me. It'll impact every employee, every client, every investor who depends on this company's stability. You'll be destroying dozens of careers to satisfy your wounded ego. Wounded ego. As if professional competence and marital fidelity were matters of personal vanity rather than basic respect and integrity. Mira, I've spent 3 years contributing to this company's success. I've worked nights, weekends, holidays. I've solved problems, managed crises, delivered results. And this morning, I learned that none of it matters as much as 8 weeks of personal history with the CEO. I'm not destroying anything. I'm claiming what I'm legally entitled to under an agreement you insisted on. If that threatens the company's stability, maybe you should have considered the implications before making personnel decisions based on personal relationships. I ended the call and turned off my phone. Whatever happened next would be handled through proper legal channels, with documentation and evidence, rather than emotional manipulation and corporate doublespeak. Lisa's office was in a downtown high-rise, occupying half of the 15th floor. The reception area was designed to project competence and success. Rich wood paneling, expensive furniture, and a wall of law books that actually looked used rather than decorative. Unlike our home office, this space felt substantial, built on real achievement rather than surface impression. She's expecting you, the receptionist said, leading me to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. Lisa stood as I entered, her expression serious but supportive. We'd always been close. Despite the 3-year age gap and different career paths, she'd been the one to encourage me to pursue engineering when I'd been uncertain about leaving law school. She'd been my best man when I'd married Mira, and now she was going to help me untangle the mess that marriage had become. "How are you holding up?" she asked, gesturing for me to sit across from her desk. "Honestly, I feel like I've been living in a fantasy for 3 years, believing that merit mattered, that marriage meant partnership, that building something together created mutual respect and obligation. And now I'm wondering how long this has been going on. How many decisions were influenced by personal relationships rather than business judgment? How many opportunities I missed because I was focused on work instead of politics?" Lisa opened a legal pad and picked up her pen. "Tell me about the prenup negotiation. Whose idea was it? How was it structured?" "Mira's lawyer suggested it. Standard protection for business owners," he said. "I didn't object because I trusted her, and I believed we were building something together. The company was small then, maybe 20 employees, limited revenue. The agreement seemed like a formality. But you reviewed it? Understood the implications?" "I read it, yes. The marital property clause seemed reasonable. If we both contributed to the company's growth, we should both benefit from its success. I never imagined a scenario where that would become contentious. Because you assumed you'd always be partners in the business as well as the marriage." "Exactly. I thought we were building towards shared goals. Her success was my success, and vice versa." Lisa made notes as I spoke, occasionally asking clarifying questions about timeline, financial details, and my specific contributions to the company's growth. After an hour, she set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "Brooks, this is a strong case. Your documented contributions, the company's growth during your marriage, the clear language in the prenup, it all supports your position. But I need you to understand what you're facing." "Meaning?" "Mira will argue that your contributions were already compensated through salary and benefits. She'll claim that business decisions were made independently of personal relationships. She'll try to minimize the company's current valuation and maximize its premarital worth. Can she do that? She can try. But we have documentation, performance reviews, project records, financial statements, growth metrics. We can demonstrate your role in the company's success and establish a clear timeline of value creation." Lisa pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. "Conservative estimate, based on the figures you've provided. If the company was worth $2 million when you married and it's worth $52 million today, the marital appreciation is $50 million. Your share would be $25 million. The number was staggering. I'd never thought about our divorce in financial terms, focused instead on the betrayal and disrespect. But the legal reality was clear. Mira's decision to promote Jace hadn't just ended our marriage. It had triggered a corporate restructuring that could fundamentally change her company's ownership structure. "What's the process?" I asked. "First, we file for divorce and request asset preservation orders to prevent any transfers or dilution of company value. Then we initiate discovery to establish the current valuation and your contributions to its growth. Finally, we negotiate a settlement or proceed to trial. How long? Depends on how hard she fights it. Could be 6 months if she's reasonable. Could be 2 years if she's not." I thought about Mira's tone during our phone call, the coldness and calculation in her voice when she'd realized the implications of my legal action. She wouldn't be reasonable. She'd fight with everything she had, using every resource and connection to protect what she considered her exclusive domain. "Lisa, there's something else you should know. I think this has been going on longer than 8 weeks. The affair? The relationship at minimum. Maybe not physical, but emotional, professional. Some of the decisions over the past few months make more sense now. Projects I was excluded from, strategy sessions I wasn't invited to, client meetings where I was suddenly unnecessary. Can you document that pattern?" "I can try. Calendar entries, email threads, meeting notes. It might take some time to piece together, but I think there's a trail." Lisa nodded, making more notes. "That could be relevant for establishing misconduct, which might impact the settlement negotiations. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, but evidence of deception or breach of fiduciary duty could influence asset distribution. Fiduciary duty? As your spouse and business partner, Mira had obligations to act in your mutual interest. If she was making business decisions based on personal relationships that disadvantaged you professionally, that could constitute a breach. The legal framework was becoming clearer, but the emotional reality remained complex. I wasn't just divorcing my wife. I was potentially dismantling the company we'd built together. Employees would lose jobs. Clients would face disruption. Investors would see their stakes diluted or eliminated. Lisa, am I doing the right thing here? She set down her pen and looked at me directly. Brooks, you've spent 3 years contributing to a company's success while being systematically excluded from its leadership. Your wife has promoted her ex-boyfriend to a position you were qualified for, based on 8 weeks of employment versus your 3 years of documented results. She's violated both professional ethics and marital trust. But the collateral damage isn't your responsibility. Mira created this situation when she decided to prioritize personal relationships over business judgment. You're simply exercising your legal rights under an agreement she insisted on. I signed the retainer agreement and authorized Lisa to begin proceedings. As I left her office, I felt a strange combination of relief and apprehension. Relief that I was finally taking action after months of growing frustration and suspicion. Apprehension about the consequences that would inevitably follow. The drive home took me past Mira's office building, a gleaming tower that housed the company we'd built together. I could see lights on the 15th floor, where she was probably working late as usual, trying to manage the crisis I'd created with my resignation and legal action. For 3 years, I'd admired her dedication and ambition. I'd supported her vision and contributed to its realization. I'd believed we were partners in every sense of the word, building something meaningful together. Now, I wondered if I'd ever really known her at all, if the woman I'd married was the same person who could casually promote her ex-boyfriend while dismissing her husband's contributions. If the business partner I'd trusted was the same executive who could rationalize obvious conflicts of interest as merit-based decisions. My phone had 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. I deleted them all without reading. Whatever Mira wanted to say could be communicated through proper legal channels. The time for personal conversation had ended when she'd announced Jace's promotion in that conference room. The house felt different when I returned, less like a home and more like a temporary shelter. I walked through rooms that had once represented shared dreams and future plans, now seeing them as assets to be divided and distributed, the kitchen where we'd planned business strategies over morning coffee, the living room where we'd celebrated company milestones and quarterly achievements, the bedroom where we'd shared intimacies that apparently meant less than 8 weeks of professional history with another man. I packed a suitcase with enough clothes for several days, then loaded my car with the documents Lisa would need for the legal proceedings. As I prepared to leave, I took one last look around the space we'd called home. Everything was exactly as we'd left it that morning, when we'd been husband and wife, business partners, and collaborators in building something we'd thought was permanent. Now we were adversaries in a legal battle that would determine not just our personal futures, but the fate of the company and everyone whose livelihood depended on its continued success. I drove to a hotel downtown, close to Lisa's office, and far from the suburban fantasy that had collapsed in a single conference room announcement. Tomorrow, the real work would begin, documenting contributions, establishing valuations, and proving that 8 weeks of personal history couldn't compete with 3 years of professional achievement. Mira had made her choice when she'd promoted Jace. Now she would live with the consequences of that decision, just as I was learning to live with the consequences of my own naive assumptions about marriage, partnership, and the relationship between personal integrity and professional success. The hotel room was anonymous and functional, nothing like the carefully curated spaces Mira preferred. But it was honest in its simplicity, unpretentious in its purpose. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in a place that matched my actual circumstances, rather than some idealized version of what my life was supposed to look like. I opened my laptop and began organizing the documentation Lisa would need. 3 years of contributions to be quantified and presented. 3 years of partnership to be legally dissolved. 3 years of trust to be unwound through depositions and financial analysis. Outside my window, the city lights stretched toward the horizon, representing millions of people navigating their own complex relationships between personal desires and professional obligations. I wondered how many of them had discovered, as I had, that the two couldn't always coexist peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, and new opportunities to discover who I really was when stripped of the roles and relationships that had defined me for the past 3 years. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged, in a simple room, with clear objectives, and no illusions about the work that lay ahead. The battle for my future was just beginning, but at least now I was fighting it on honest terms.